Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I'm your host, Michael. Back this week is my regular co-host, partner in crime, Pound for Pound Boxing Report partner in crime, Kent. Joining us live all the way from Taiwan is Sean. How you doing, fellas?
Good, good.
For those who are new to the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report is a YouTube show, live YouTube show, / blog / podcast that discusses all things boxing. Our motto is, when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When boxing is bad, we will talk about it. The bottom line is, if it concerns boxing, we will talk about it. To find out more information about the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, all things Pound for Pound Boxing Report, there are two main places you can go. You can go to the official blog page for the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. The link for that is b4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. And repeat that, b4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. A couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that we were nominated, that the blog was nominated for a Black Web Blog Award. Well, I just found out earlier today that the Pound for Pound Boxing Report blog page is now in the finals. We made it to the finals in terms of final voting for the Black Web Blog Awards for the category of Best Sports Blog. And the voting for that starts on October the 21st. So be a friend, be a pal, be a buddy. On the 21st, make sure to vote for the Pound for Pound Boxing Report blog.
Vote.
Absolutely, I won it last year in 2013. I'm trying to win it again in 2014. So do what Ken says. Right. Do what Ken said. Right. Do what Ken said. Vote, vote, vote. The blog has past episodes of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report blog, podcast and YouTube page, as well as articles and videos and whatnot written and done by yours truly. You can also go to the podcast page. The link for that is p4pboxingreport.podomatic.com, and repeat that, p4pboxingreport.podomatic.com, where you can find our previous episodes of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report podcast. On the podcast page as well as the blog page, you will also find links to find everything Pound for Pound Boxing Report all over the internet, all over the web, all over social media. The Facebook page, the YouTube page, the Google Plus page, the Pinterest board. We have a Pinterest board, the Tumblr page, the RSS feed where you can subscribe to that. We are on Stitcher Radio as well. Please go to Stitcher Radio and just do a search of boxing, or just type in Pound for Pound Boxing Report. That's POUND, the number 4, POUND Boxing Report. And check the show out there and tell us what you think. We would love to hear what you have to say. What you think about the show. Also, we got a link to where you can donate your account, be a friend, be a pal, be a buddy. Donate your Twitter account. The link for that is donateyouraccount.com/P4pboxingreport. Repeat that, donateyouraccount.com/P4pboxingreport. And what happens is, any tweet that comes from the Pound for Pound Boxing Report Twitter page, and the Twitter handle for that is @P4pboxingreport. Any tweet that comes from the Pound for Pound Boxing Report Twitter page, your Twitter account would automatically retweet any tweet that comes from the Pound for Pound Boxing Report Twitter page. And I want to thank Alma on Twitter, No Hold Bars on Twitter, and others who have subscribed, who have donated their accounts. So thanks, guys. Thanks, fellas, for doing that. We really appreciate it. Those homework matters out the way. Let's get this show started tonight, fellas, by doing a recap of what went down this weekend. And I want to begin talking about world title bout, IBF Jr. Middleweight title bout that took place in Cancun, Mexico, between reigning champion Carlos Molina and Cornelius K9 Brundrage. Since you was off the show last weekend, I'll go to you first. Brundrage, he's had an up and down career, but you got to give him credit at age 41. Though Molina was coming off of a layoff, so was Brundrage. But I have to give K9 credit here. He put on a heck of a fight. Put Molina down in round 1, hurt him again in round 2, round 8 as well, before scoring a 12-round clear-cut decision win. The scores were 117, 106, 116, 109, 115, 112, 110, excuse me. As far as I was concerned, Brundrage dominated throughout, was always on the front foot. Hurt Molina anytime he landed with the right hand, especially. And to my surprise, look, I said last week that when you look at Brundrage, for someone who looks like the Hulk, he's not really much of a inside fighter, but he landed some body punches as well. He did some effective holding too. I mean, that's what he does. But I got to give him for landing a few shots here and there. Overall, Kent, a really thorough and complete performance by K9.
Yeah, I thought, I watched the whole fight, and I thought the whole key to the fight was Brundrage establishing the jab in first round, using that jab, getting the stick out there, and making Molina just think that, and the funny thing about Molina was he looked in good shape, but he looked like a guy going, like, just his performance, like a guy that may have overtrained or maybe just was very, very flat. I had found out after the fight that he was training in Mexico because obviously he's not allowed in the country right now, and he
Yeah,
probably
give the folks the background on
yeah.
that for those who
Basically,
don't know.
he's been deported. There was a charge that he had stemming from years ago where he was involved with a younger female that was not of age, and she kind of cried rape, and the situation goes that he was charged with it, and it just a whole legal mess with that, and somehow he slipped through the cracks, and it was kind of not they didn't follow up on it, and eventually it came to the surface later, and it was rectified, and he was deported. He was arrested in Chicago, and he was deported to Mexico. He spent some time in jail down there, and now he's basically, that's where he was training for the fight in Mexico, and he wasn't with his normal trainers leading up to the fight. It was only about 2 weeks before the fight that his regular trainers from Chicago came down and started observing what was being done. And my question is, why would you wait until 2 weeks before the fight to make your presence felt? If you're supposedly these guys trainers, it has probably has a lot to do with money. It probably has a lot to do with just the situation in general. Um, it's very, very difficult, a situation when you have a guy that's a convicted, child molester, because that's essentially what it was, and that I think that was part of the situation, with them, and then I think money, and it was just a whole mess from that standpoint. And it just seemed like he wasn't there. He was in the ring. He was physically there. He was going through the motions, but it wasn't the Molina that we know. It wasn't the Molina that beat up Ishe Smith. It wasn't the Molina that beat up Corey Spink. It certainly wasn't the Molina that should have gotten a decision against Arizlandi Lara. He just looked very flat, very lethargic, nothing behind his punches. I mean, he's never been a big puncher, but he usually punches a little bit sharper than what he showed on Saturday. A lot of his punches were kind of slappy, kind of, nothing behind him. Brundrage just established a jab from round one. He was able to hurt him with good right hands and body shots, and that was basically the tenor of the fight. Very smart performance from Brundrage. I mean, congrats to him on being the oldest junior middleweight champion in the world. I mean, he's going to probably get a big fight coming out of this now, maybe, depending on, what's out there. And kudos to him for putting on a good performance in a fight that he wasn't expected to win. Nobody I know expected him to win. Everybody was picking Molina, so hats off to him.
You mentioned, let me ask you a quick follow-up question before I go to Sean. You mentioned how Molina seemed, I guess, basically lethargic and out of it in sorts. Do you think the issues with being deported and the legal issues that's kind of hovering over him still, do you think that played a role in that, or was it just something physical in his training?
I think it was I think it was a combination of things. You know, you had the legal issues, you had the inactivity, you had just the simple fact that he wasn't able to fight. You know, he had to fight with Charlo, and they arrested him in Vegas. Yeah, I believe. Yeah, that's right. They arrested him. I said Chicago. They arrested him in Vegas, I believe. At the on the day of the weigh-in. And he just didn't seem, his mind didn't seem to be in the fight. He didn't seem to be in it at all. And frankly, it's going to be very, very difficult for him to come back from this point because the only thing that kept him relevant was the belt. He wasn't making any money. He wasn't. It's not a guy that that's a guy with a big promoter was going to go fight. Unless there was a belt involved. And now he has no belt. There isn't going to be any offers coming his way for a big fight. I mean, it's going to be very, very difficult for him to get back to where he was. I mean, unless there's some sort of change with his legal situation, his change in, the training and the situation that went on prior to the fight, and just getting his mind correct. That's going to be the whole thing, but it's going to be difficult because he makes no money, and the only thing that he had that was a bargaining chip was that title, and now the title's gone. And now who's going to want to what big name is going to go want to fight him now? If there's no belt, there's no reason to fight him. Plain and simple.
Especially in Mexico.
Yep. No way. No way. No chance. No one's going to go down there. Why would anybody risk that?
Yeah, I agree with you.
Go down there and fight him and end up getting robbed. It's no sense,
I won't go to you on this one, Sean. Your quick assessment of the fight, and let's talk about the future for Kenan Brundrage for a second. Kudos for him winning the belt. He has a bargaining chip now, but when you look at the 154-pound landscape, look, Andrade is going to be fighting Jermell Charlo December. Mayweather, who knows what he's going to do next, who he's going to fight. Canelo, he was scheduled for a fight in December, but I don't see Brundrage landing a fight against either of those guys. But what your assessment of the fight, first off, quickly, and what options are there for Brundrage? Because even when he had the belt before, it wasn't like he was getting, forget a big fight, he wasn't getting many fights, period, beforehand. I don't see what's out there really for him now that he's won the belt again, excuse me.
The one thing you failed to realize, or not realize but discuss, was the fact that now he's with Al Heyman.
Yeah, you heard about that. Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's titles out there, or there's fights for him. He's got a title. He has Al Heyman in his corner. So, I mean, financially, he's fine. He will get fights. Unlike Molina, Carlos, who's going to, they're glad to take his title off of him because he wasn't connected. Nobody likes his style. He doesn't sell. So now he will fade away. Brundrage, though, I mean, he's good because he's old and he's got that marquee sort of thing because now all these old guys have titles, with Taylor, Hopkins, and now him. So it's kind of interesting TV. But, I mean, his style is boring. Nobody really wants to watch him fight. So I think he'll just be used as a stepping stone for one of the younger guys under Al Heyman, and he'll get a good payday out of it, and there you go.
Yeah, and I also want to say, his style isn't that great, but he does market himself good with that whole, the dog thing, So he even though he's has a god awful style, he can market himself well as an opponent. That's the good thing about him, and I think that's half the battle for Heyman. It's not like he's a guy like, I don't know, like Miguel Vasquez that. You can't market him. He doesn't have a personality. He doesn't know English. With him, you got a guy that knows how to market himself. He entertains. At the press, and that's good. So it'll be easy to sell him as an opponent at 154 or at 160.
Yeah, and the Charlo boys, I mean, one of them has a fight with Andrade, the other one doesn't have a fight, so maybe that's his next fight, a title
Yeah,
shot against him.
I think that's what it is. I think, and I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to use, maybe Brundrage to get a guy back in the mix if they want to, like a guy like, I don't know, like a Trout or a Lara, because he's there with Al Heyman. So you have to do something with these guys. Like they have a lot of guys, and you can't keep all of them. You got to try to keep all of them happy. It's going to be hard. So you're going to have to try to move one of these guys who doesn't have a belt that's looking for a big payday into a fight. So you try to move the Charlos. You try to get Trout back in the picture. You try to get, like Lara back in the picture. I mean, I know Heyman has Molina, but I don't think he's going to use him that much, really, because he's in Mexico. There's no marketing there.
He just signed him so he could take his title.
Yep, just like the similar situation with Vasquez, just picked him up to grab the belt, which is smart. That's smart business. You grab the guy that has the belt, put him on somebody that you really believe in. It's good business on his end. So yeah, I think Brundrage is definitely he'll market himself well as an opponent, and it's a good way to pass a belt to somebody else that you may want to move.
Yeah, young, more exciting style fighter.
Yeah, let's move on to talk about a kind of a doubleheader that took place this past Saturday in London. I guess the main event, if you will, of that is I ain't gonna call it the main event. I just call one of the fights on that card was Lee Selby, who fought in the United States a couple of times. He fought an eliminator against a guy by the name of, I guess, Joel Brunker. Even though Brunker had an undefeated record coming in, I didn't see an impressive resume in terms of the guys who fought. Selby scoring a 9th round TKO. Selby was the favorite going in. Boxed well against Brunker. Good jab, decent hook, good right hand. He's a little wild with it. It's not really straight and short. I mean, sharp and short, excuse me. Also threw good body shots as well. It's really dominated Brunker throughout. I saw a little bit of this fight, but I didn't see all of it. And I'll go to you on this one, Sean. Your assessment of Selby and how he looks, or your assessment of him as a fighter. And with this win, he's supposed to fight Gradovich with his next fight coming up, I believe, next month. Your thoughts on Lee Selby?
Hey, another good young UK fighter from those smaller weights, right? They have quite a few of them. So, I mean, if they just fight domestically, they're going to do well. But it's good to see that he's got this big fight waiting for him now that he has a big win. He's a good boxer, and, I mean, he looked really good. And he looked like he's at his prime right now and sort of the perfect time for a big title shot. And against a guy like Gradovich, who, is tough and pushes a fight, so he will make an exciting fight. But he's also a little limited as far as like his skills and like speed and foot movement. So a guy like Selby, I mean, he might just have if he's tough enough to take it, he might be skilled enough to end up getting the big win. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. I mean, it's a good fight. I look forward to it. I mean, that division is full of great fighters, and it's nice to see another guy put his hand in there and stir the pot a little bit. And it's finally good to see Gradovich in there with somebody. I mean, I know he beat the Australian guy 2 times, but that guy is, other than being under 50 cents, I mean, who is he and what has he ever done? He has a good promoter, or a big name promoter. So, I mean,
well, actually, go ahead. I'm sorry, Sean. I'm sorry.
I mean, Selby, I mean, he showed his skill. I mean, he has wins, and in this last fight, he looked really impressive.
Actually, speaking of Gradovich, I think he's in for a pretty decent tussle. His next fight, which is going to be on the undercard of Crawford and Beltran. He's going to be fighting Jasonville. I think that's going to be a better bout than people realize. I go to you on this one, Kent. Your thoughts on Lee Selby and his win, and your impressions of him as a fighter.
I think he's a good fighter. My thing is, he fought Joel Brunker. That's my thing.
Yeah.
He fought a guy that was 27-0 with 15 knockouts that hadn't fought in 14 months. And I mean, it's hard to assess, you know, you know, how good he really is. I mean, he hasn't really fought anybody. I mean, I like his skill. I think he has speed. He knows how to, he's a good boxer. He knows how to move. He has good legs, He has good defense. But my thing is, he hasn't been in with somebody like Evgeny Gradovich. Someone who will take him to a dark place. Someone who makes you fight his fight no matter what. And that's the thing with Gradovich. He's the type of guy that will impose his style on you and make you fight his fight. And after the fight, Selby making all these comments, Brunker's better than Gradovich. I'm like, yeah, you're a little cocky there. It's easy for you to say that stuff when you're not in the ring with the guy. I mean, and I like his cockiness. I think that's good. I think he's a good seller. He knows how to sell himself to the public. But I want to see him back it up. I want to see him back up all his talk. If he thinks that Gradovich is such a quote-unquote easy fight, then it should be no problem with him fighting him as soon as possible. As soon as Gradovich, gets his, other fight out of the way, it shouldn't be an issue. I would assume shouldn't be an issue. So I want to see him in there with a top. I want to see him in there what he does against Gradovich. It's easy for him to showcase his skill against Brunker and Romulo Koasha. It's guys that are slower foot, limited. Gradovich is. You could say Gradovich is in that boat, but I think he's a lot better than those guys, and he's proven he's a lot better than them. Gradovich is slow in the foot. He has slow feet. He's not the fastest guy, but he makes you fight his fight at all costs.
Right, that's the thing. When has Selby faced anybody with that kind of activity, that kind of work rate?
No, that's the point.
Who will go to the body on him like Gradovich will.
Yeah, and it's easy for him to say that it's going to be an easy fight. Until you get in the ring and actually fight the man, you can't say it's going to be an easy fight. I want to see him back up his talk. I like the fact that he's talking. I like the fact that he's using his cockiness to sell himself. That's what you should do as a fighter. If you have it, use it. But I want to see him get in there and do what he says he's going to do against Gradovich, not just talking to it. And if he can do it and he can I'm critical of Selby because he hasn't fought anybody like Gradovich. But if he goes in there and he does something against Gradovich, makes it a tough fight, and beats him, then I'll be like, hey, he did it. He showed that he can back up the talk. Until he can back up the talk, I don't know what he does against Gradovich. Personally, I don't think it ends well. But unless he shows something that could, in that fight, to stop Gradovich from doing what he wants to do, then until then, it's just it is what it is.
Let's talk about the other fight on this card, which I may be reactionary here, but I'm very excited about. I was very excited about this performance as Anthony Joshua, 2012 Olympic gold medalist, London Games, scored a second-round knockout over Denis Bakhtov. A lot of folks thought going in that Bakhtov was going to give Joshua his toughest bout. On paper, it looked like it was going to be his toughest fight. Thought he was going to take him some rounds, but as far as I'm concerned, Joshua, he put on his best performance of his career to date. It's not just the size of Anthony Joshua. The cat is smooth, highly skillful for such a big guy. Power obvious because Bakhtov has been with some guys who could punch as well, some tough guys, and he didn't get bounced around the ring like Anthony Joshua bounced him around the ring. I'll go to you on this one, Ken. Am I a little bit wrong for being, am I wrong for being so excited about Joshua's performance? Because based on what I saw here, I think he has star potential, and I think he could be a future world champion.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I have no problem with you having that, opinion, but I feel like they're pushing this kid a little too fast. I get the impression that they're pushing this kid a little too fast, a little too quickly. They're so desperate for another Lewis, another Tyson, another, heavyweight to captivate the sport, and that's wonderful. I want to see that too. I want to see Anthony Joshua do great things. The kid is likable. He's got skill. He's got power. He's got everything that you want. But I feel like they're pushing him a little too fast. What I mean by that is they're talking about putting him in with David Price in 2000.
Right.
And that's a little worrisome for a guy that young. And a kid that really hasn't been a pro a year yet. I feel like they're rushing him too quick. I have no problem with him fighting Bakhtov, because let me tell you something about Bakhtov. Bakhtov's a tough cookie. Okay, what Anthony Joshua did on Saturday, a lot of guys haven't been able to do to Bakhtov ever. Stop him in the second round. People say, oh, well, it was a small heavyweight. Yeah, he's a small heavyweight, but Denis Bakhtov is a very durable small heavyweight. A guy that's been in it. Look at the competition he's fought. Go look up his record. Look who he's been in there with. He hasn't been in there with any softies, that's for sure.
Yeah, Emanuel Jr. and others, so yeah.
Yeah, he knows his way around the ring. He's an experienced guy. So Josh got a good win, and I think that's the level Joshua should be at for the next year to 2 years. Fighting guys that are durable. You don't want to rush the kid. You don't want to rush the kid. The kid's got stardom written all over him. He's got every... I'm not saying go slowly with him, because I think he should be fighting this level anyway. I just think putting him in with David Price and others at that are like in between, they're like borderline European level. It's a little risky at this point. I don't think he should be fighting David Price at this point. Frankly, I'm a little skeptical of them putting him. His next fight is supposed to be against Michael Spratt. I'm a little skeptical about that too, because people say, oh well, Michael Spratt, whenever he steps up, he loses. Yeah, that's true, but the guy is experienced. Spratt is not a pushover, okay, and I think Spratt is the type of guy that, depending on depending on where his condition is and where his what he's been doing, because he takes some fights on short notice. It depends on if he comes in prepared. I mean, he could give Joshua a tough fight. I'm not going to say he beat Anthony Joshua, but I think he would give Joshua a tough fight. I mean, he's not a spring chicken, but he's an experienced guy. He knows how to fight. I just think they're rushing. I think they're pushing him a little too hard, a little too quick. And with a young guy like Joshua, who has a couple years to really, develop and to really, build him, I wouldn't be so quick to put him in with David Price.
I go to you on this one, Sean. To Kent's point, look, the enthusiasm for me is there because the skill, the power, how can I put it? He has that it factor, Joshua. You can just tell in and outside the ring.
He's the total package.
Right. But to Kent's point, they're talking about him fighting David Price at some point in 2015. Do you agree with Kent's thought that that may be pushing him a little bit, that may be a step too much for Anthony Joshua at this point?
Coming out of the Olympics, I mean, everybody was excited about him. He was a big product, right? The future of English boxing. And a lot of people early on were critical of the fact that he was getting so much TV time in like big slots early on for his first few fights against nobodies. But I mean, it's not unusual for them to push and develop guys like that and bring them along. I mean, I understand what you're saying as far as pushing him too fast. I mean, I think it'd be a little more interesting if they had him against some different styles and some
And let me interrupt you, Sean. Can't mention the fight with Michael Sprott. That fight is going to be on the undercard of
like next month.
value Nathan Cleverly rematch November 22nd.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, that level of fight, it's tough. But, I mean, obviously, when they're talking about guys like Price and this and that, I think they're sort of trying to build it up a bit more. And I don't think they would push him in that fight unless they felt that he progressed to the point where it was viable. I mean, at this point, I think they're putting him in with these kind of C-level guys who are tough and have been in with good fighters, and everyone sort of needed to step over them to move to the next level. Like the guy he just beat and Sprott, and then they're talking about Williams, who also has been in with everybody and has never been knocked out. I mean, not really such a threat, but I mean, just a tough guy who will give him rounds and hasn't been stopped. So they think, if he's able to walk through these kind of guys like Sprott and Williams and whoever's going to happen after that. Because I mean, that fight with the Liverpool boy probably wouldn't be until like this time next year anyway, which would be a year and probably 6 more fights down the road because the guy's staying so busy. I think if they feel he's at the level where he can do it, they will put him in. But I mean, if he's not quite there, I mean, I think they will just keep trying to sell it and push it, right? Hearns is like being a salesman, and he's trying to build him. Just like Eubank's father and them are trying to build him. He hasn't beat anyone, but they're talking about him beating GGG. Like they're building the man, making him so that his name is becoming something big and recognizable so that, people will buy into it. But I mean, I'm under no illusions that I think Hearns is going to push him too quick because, I mean, he sees him as his future. I mean, you have the heavyweight champion of the world, and as a promoter, you're set. I mean, all these smaller guys and all that don't mean anything if you have the #1 heavyweight. And everyone is looking for a position to take that, whether it's Wilder or this guy. Everybody's looking for who's going to be taking down the Klitschko's and taking over the power sort of vacuum. So, I mean, he's a good fighter, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with him.
Yeah, I just my issue is, I mean, I understand that you're trying to sell him, but I just get the impression with Hearns sometimes that he really believes some of the delusions that he, says. I really wonder sometimes.
You have to remember his dad's been in the game like for 40 years. So
yeah,
I mean,
but you got to understand too, his dad. His dad was kind of like, you also got to remember that Barry was also kind of shunned out of the sport too. He ended up promoting darts, so.
Well, the darts and the snooker thing, he really did even before the boxing thing.
Right, but the point is, that's what he ended up doing. It just recently his son got into it and stuff.
Okay.
I know it's about money and it's about, selling the product.
His dad, let me say, he was a little bit more cautious with his main fighters.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Look what he did with Eubank. Look what he did with he didn't put for years people wanted Eubank to fight the big fights, and he fought these guys we never even heard of. Like, I'm not judging, Eubank, but I'll tell you this: Chris Eubank would have fought the best. I just think he was just his Barry Hearn just put him in these dumb these fights that a lot of people wanted to see, but other than that, the point is, I just think that Eddie, I think sometimes he says this stuff and he really believes it, and he believes some of the delusional stuff he says, and that's for a young guy like him, that's a little dangerous because you've already you pushed a guy already into irrelevancy with Burns. You just pushed him too hard, and you got him, and eventually, he's gotten beaten a couple times, and he hasn't looked good since. So I mean, you just gotta be careful with some of these young guys. That's the point. I'm not saying have him fight bums for 40 fights. I'm just saying there's a way to build a career, and I just think he's just firing too quick. I think he gets too excited by seeing him blast out Bakhtov. Like, you got a little too excited. You know what I'm saying? You just got to realize he just stopped Denis Bakhtov. He didn't stop, a top contender. He stopped a real good stepping stone, borderline, high-level journeyman. That's the best way you could probably describe Bakhtov.
Let's move on to the boxing news. Start with a bit of sad news, really sad news as far as I was concerned, as Emanuel Augustus. For those who don't remember, one of the more exciting and, as far as I'm concerned, popular fighters, particularly among hardcore fans in the late 90s, early to mid 2000s, was shot as he was leaving a Baton Rouge, Louisiana gym Monday night, I believe it was, and is now in critical condition on life support. I'll go to you on this week. Have you heard any news about why this happened, and have you heard any updates on the condition of Emanuel Augustus?
No, it's been very, very private. The family wants it private, and it's understandable. It's a very tragic and sad time. Only word that really came out was from a guy who was in that gym, Chris Singleton, who's a current pro fighter, and he spars a lot with Emanuel, and which leads me to believe that Emanuel, even though he's hanging around gyms, there's probably still a desire to fight and a desire to stay in the sport. And it's sad when you hear stuff like this, because he was one of the most charismatic TV fighters. I'm not going to say, listen, if you people look at his record and they'll say, oh, it was a journeyman. No, he's much better than a journeyman. He just had a journeyman's record.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for those who don't know, go to YouTube. You get his fight and look up his fight with Mickey Ward. That's all you need to know.
All you got to do is look up his fight with Mickey Ward, his fights with Ray Oliveira.
Hell, even the non-title bout against Mayweather back in 2000.
Yep. And Floyd Mayweather.
He gave Mayweather one of the toughest fights of his career. Bloodied up his nose at the time.
Yep. And he ended up a busted hand in that fight. That was the toughest fight of Floyd's career. Up until that point. You also have other fights of his against Alex Trujillo, and countless other fights. They're all on YouTube. He had a cult following, very popular fighter. His record doesn't reflect his talent. He's the type of guy that just never had anybody behind him. He kind of took fights on short notice. Sometimes he would take fights on a day's notice, hours notice. People say, oh, he had a journeyman. He was a lot better than a journeyman, because I could say about half of those fights he lost, he probably got robbed in, because he wasn't making money for the promoter. He was just a guy that and his style was they called him the drunken master, because he had this style, like he would just dance in the ring, like in the corner, he would just like bop his head, and it was like he was listening to something in his head, like listening to music in his head, and the crowd loved it. The crowd loved it. They loved him, man. They listen. He had the second most appearances on Wednesday night fights / Friday night fights, behind Mickey Ward, and that shows you how far he goes back to the Wednesday night fight days on ESPN. That's how far back he goes, and that's how long he was on ESPN, and it's sad, and I hope he makes a full recovery, and I hope he has a productive life, and he recovers. And it's just sad, because he was such a staple for TV, and he's one of the guys, like when I first started watching boxing, was one of the guys I watched, him and Mickey Ward, and those were guys that people respected, because they were blue collar guys. They didn't have the backing, they didn't have the money behind them, but they always they gave the fans what they wanted to see. They fought hard, they gave people what they wanted to see, and they put on a show, and that's what I'm gonna remember Emanuel for, putting on a great show and always giving his best, and despite this stack that was again stacked, whatever deck was stacked against him, he always put on a show, So I hope he makes a full recovery. It's really sad.
A brief word on the news involving Emanuel Augustus, Sean, as well as Emanuel Augustus, the fighter.
I mean, tragedy happens every day, so I wasn't overly shocked or anything else. It's always sad when somebody you are familiar with, especially, I mean, if you're older and you watch these guys fight, like Emanuel Augustus, Gaddy, Ward, Harold Frazier. These are the guys that I watched like mostly, every week on normal TV fights. So you get familiar with them, and it's always sad when you see somebody have something like this happen, which is sort of pointless. But I mean, this year there's been lots of that shit going on. I mean, somebody getting shot outside of a gym in Spain, another guy getting his leg almost cut off. I mean, it's not a surprise. In the world of boxing, this kind of shit has been happening for hundreds of years.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, sad story involving Emanuel Augustus, and then to co-sign what Ken said, we can just hope for the best and hope that he recovers.
Yeah, I want to jump in real quick. Please, anybody who's never seen Emanuel Augustus fight, especially younger people, younger generation of fans, please look up his fights. Please watch him. You'll be thoroughly entertained. Believe me, he was the fans' fighter. That's what he was. And people gonna go look up his record, ignore his record. He's a lot better fighter than his record. I know that for a fact. I know it firsthand. I've seen him fight. Frankly, he shouldn't have 34 losses. He should probably have maybe half of them cut off, because he got robbed in fights. And all you have to do is, if you want to see a gross I mean, it was a very, very good fight, but it was an absolute gross robbery. Watch his fight the first fight with Courtney Burton. Watch that fight, but don't look at the result of the fight. Will show you what Emanuel Augustus went through his entire career. But please look up his fights, watch his fights. You'll be thoroughly entertained.
And there's a great YouTube video of the Drunken Master.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's about 3 or 4 highlight clips of Emanuel Augustus. There was one I posted on Facebook the other day that was really good, and there's a few others, but yeah, just watch what just definitely watch him, especially for the younger fans who never seen him fight. You have to watch him.
Yeah, if you're a young boxer, you just do a YouTube search of Emanuel Augustus, Drunken Master, and you'll just find a couple of those videos, which he looks like a drunken monkey from the old kung fu movies. Moving around, arms flailing away, moving one way, moving to another way, and he would hit a guy, and the guy couldn't touch him. Then he would bounce around the ring, dart from one corner, one part of the ring to the next. I mean, it is really, really awesome. And again, sad news that guy who entertained so many, particularly in the early days of Friday night fights, has had this happen to him.
Yeah,
so again,
and listen, he was a big favorite on Wednesday night fights and Friday night fights, because this is going back even when they had Wednesday night fights. So it's hard to, like, it's crazy, like you know what happens all the time, but you can't believe it, when you see a guy like that who entertained everybody and the fans loved him, and then something happens to them, It's crazy. But it's happened all too much this year with fighters. With Jamie Moore, Matthew Macklin's trainer, Kell Brook just won a world title and almost had his leg cut off. you know, it just happens too much.
Apple. So let's move on. A couple of news, other news events of the day, which was really discussed this right before the show started. This wasn't even going to be part of the show, but it kind of broke over the last couple of days. And I'll split these. I'll go to you, Kent, with one story, and I'll go to you, Sean, with another story. News broke today, and I'll go to you on this one, Kent, that former featherweight and junior lightweight champion Mikey Garcia was in the middle of a lawsuit with top-ranked Bob Arum. Has decided to move up from 130 pounds all the way to junior welterweight, where he will now campaign. Your thoughts on this move, Kent? To me, I see this move all the way to 140, and glad for him to do it. He's having issues making weight, but on the other hand, I look at this move and I say, I can't help but say, part of me thinks that he's doing this, one, to probably land a fight with Manny Pacquiao for the big money, and two, it makes me wonder, the fight that folks were talking about with Mikey Garcia was an eventual showdown with Terrence Crawford. I think part of this move was he, Garcia, or his people really don't want a fight with Terrence Crawford at this present time and day, so he's going to skip that lightweight division and go for the money and possibly fight Pacquiao.
I see it as, I think there's several guys at 130 and 135 that he could fight. He's skipping over, you know, those fights. I'm going to be honest with you. He's only fought 2 guys at 130, and neither guy was in the top 5, really. I mean, Burgos is not a top 5 fighter, and yeah, he beat Martinez. I'll give him that. You know, he beat a titleist. But, you know, Martinez was proven not to really be that good. I mean, he lost to Ricky Burns. I mean, shit, you know. I mean, so yeah, he was a title holder, you know.
It's just the same Martinez who knocked Mikey Garcia down, I believe.
Yeah. But you got to understand that, you know, that I just feel like, you know, we're not seeing the fights that we want to see from Mikey. I mean, as fans, I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that want to see these Pacquiao fights and you know, all the big fights. And that's great. You want to see the big fights, fine, you know, for the money. That's fine. But there's fights out there that we want to see, you know, as fans, and he's not going to do it. So he's going to probably fight, you know, Pacquiao. And
Crawford. I was going to say not just Crawford I'm talking about, but there's another champion, Uchiyama at 130. I know Uchiyama hasn't fought this year. I think he's out because of an injury.
See, the thing at 130 is you had guys like Miura and Uchiyama, and listen, and people will be like, who's Uchiyama, who's Miura? But I'll tell you this, Steve Farford had them 2 ahead of Mikey Garcia on his 130-pound, you know, top 135-pound fighter list. So I'm just going to tell you right now that, you know, people know him. You may not know him, but people do know him, and I think you should look at them, you know, and realize that, you know, he people say, oh, he was the top 130-pound guy, but he didn't beat any of the top 130-pounders. He beat ranked fighters, but he didn't beat the absolute top guys in the division. So that's my issue with moving up and past, and then you move past 35. There's some good fighters there. There's Crawford there and several others, and you're not gonna fight them. So if this is all I'm gonna say about Mikey Garcia, I don't mind if Mikey Garcia fights at 140 pounds. But he has to fight the absolute best. Whether it be Pacquiao, whether it be other guys in the division, you know, whatever happens with this whole Top Rank, if he leaves Top Rank and goes somewhere else, I want to see him at least fight the best. Not just guys in the lower part of the top 10 or top 12 or 14. I want to see you fight the absolute best. People claim you're a pound for pound in the making. You got to go prove it. You got to go fight those guys. You got to fight the absolute best. And if you want to go fight Pacquiao, and that it was offered to you coming up, then great, because Pacquiao is a top fighter. I have no problem with that. I have no problem with you fighting anybody in the top 5, you know, at 140. You just got to fight the absolute best. You can't say you're going to fight somebody and then go and take a safe fight. Like, I don't know, like Mauricio Herrera. Like you're saying, oh yeah, I'm coming to the 140 pound, I'm going to fight the best, and then you say Mauricio Herrera. Not dissing Mauricio Herrera, mind you. He's a champion, but he's not like one of the top dogs in the division. You know, he got a belt, but he's not. People don't view him as, say, a top 3 or top 4 fighter in the division. So.
And before I move on to Sean to talk about the next news, I mentioned Pacquiao because people will say, "Hey, he's fighting at welterweight." Well, there's been rumblings.
He says he's ready to move down in weight, and you know what? I think we're seeing, you know, it seemed like after the Marquez fight, after he got knocked out by Marquez, we've seen a more motivated Pacquiao. I mean, he's been motivated, but I think there was a little bit of distraction with the politics and, you know, just other things that he was doing. I think he's rededicated himself to boxing. For him to say, at this point in his career, he's going to move down from one, you know, he recently, you know, the last couple of years, he's fought as high as junior middleweight. He's going to move down. That's incredible, and that just shows you how rededicated he is to the sport. And that's great if he moves down and comes to 140. I mean, there's plenty of fights there he can fight. Even if it isn't Mikey Garcia, there's plenty of top guys he can fight there, and that's great. And you know what? It's just great to see Pacquiao at this late stage in his career showing a new rededication to the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go to you on this one, Sean, this next story. Yesterday, news broke that Oscar De La Hoya, Golden Boy Promotions, has decided to buy out the shareholders of Golden Boy. Basically, going to buy out Golden, so he can basically have Golden Boy all to himself. Your thoughts on?
He bought out. He didn't buy out like a bunch of people. He bought out Philip Anschutz. That's who he bought out. Right. The guy from EG.
I personally think this is a very wise move on De La Hoya's part. I have no problem with it whatsoever. Sean, your thoughts on the move by De La Hoya to buy out the shareholders?
Both of these moves are the same type of thing. I mean, they're both power plays from their promoters. I mean, De La Hoya is trying to take control of his promotional company and making sure that he has the higher percentage so that he's the one dictating what's going on, especially with all the shit that happened with Schaefer and Heyman and everything else. And he just took his main guy and ran to HBO to sort of say, fuck Showtime. And, you know, he's making his power play, his stand, right? And, I mean, Top Rank is doing the same thing. They're moving Garcia, Crawford up to 140. They're moving Pacquiao down to 140. They're not going to be playing games with Heyman and him trying to control those fighters on Showtime or wherever he ends up taking them on public TV. He's going to then push HBO and push like fights and top-level fights with top-name guys. And they're like moving them all to a weight where they're going to be in control. I mean, not just that, but there's also Algieri, Ruslan. There's a lot of top-ranked guys at that weight. Prosto, who Garcia is running away from. Garcia is going to move up to 147, so that division is going to be mostly top-ranked dominated, except for Broner and Matisse.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say this. I don't think Mikey's running from Crawford. I just kind of wanted to see the fight sooner, but I get why they're making the fight a little later. They're trying to build up. I think they're trying to, you know, maybe get whatever issues Mikey has straightened out, you know, his grievances with Top Rank. I think that's basically what this move is. They're kind of squaring things away, and hopefully, you know, Mikey stays with Top Rank, and because those fights there, those are good fights, all those fights, and I don't think he's necessarily unless Mikey goes and signs with Al Heyman, then I can't say he's really running from Crawford. I just think part of me wants to see the fight, while they're both at their peak. I get why they're doing what they're doing with that, but I don't think he's running from him. I think there's other guys, top guys, that he may just be, moving around, But it is what it is.
And you never know. Look, Crawford, he's not going to stay at lightweight that long. He's really a junior welterweight, fighting at 135 pounds to begin with. Maybe
I think this fight with Beltran probably be what.
This is his last fight.
At 35.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this is more than likely his last fight at 35. I mean, he's not. At least you could say for Crawford, he's not taking an easy road out. He's fighting Beltran, who's a top guy, and he won his title the hard way. He went through Gamboa. He's one of the guys that's basically, he's taken a hard road. He hasn't taken any easy steps. I mean, he's been, I think, the B side, every fight leading up except this one coming up. He's the A side. But every other fight, he's sort of been the B side. So he's earned his way into a top position. He hasn't, he's fought, the guys they put in front of him, guys that most guys wouldn't fight. He fought them, and he's doing what he has to do. And I think Crawford at 140, I'm looking forward to it.
Right. So now that I think about it, with Crawford moving up to 140 eventually, maybe just the fight will eventually happen. So I could be completely off here.
Yeah, it could. I think it will. It will happen.
That's the future.
Yeah, I think you got to understand in boxing also. There's reason why they build fights and then they have them happen, because you can't just have it right away. I mean, you have to get people excited about it. You have to have people, on the edge of their seats wanting to fight. It's about maximizing your profit. And you know what? I could always say that Top Rank is good at maximizing their profit. They're very good at it. They've done it for 50 years. So I'm not going to hate on that,
Absolutely. So now we're going from kind of the serious to, quite frankly, the ridiculous, if you really think about it, as news broke this week that there's apparent beef between Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Stephen A. Smith. This all goes back to when Stephen A., following the fight with his Mayweather's rematch with Maidana, basically said that he wasn't, as far as I'm concerned, it goes back to when Stephen A. Smith said that Mayweather, the way he looked against Maidana, he felt that Mayweather wouldn't beat Pacquiao. Weeks later, when news popped up that Mayweather may fight Amir Khan, Stephen A. Smith went on his show, First Take, and said that basically he said that that fight is not the fight that the fans want to see.
Absolutely not.
And that if he was not going to talk about Mayweather until he fights a fight with Pacquiao. Folks don't want to see him against Amir Khan. They want to see him against Pacquiao.
The only people that want to see him fight these pointless fights is his fans. That's the only people that want to see him fight is his fans. These pointless fights. And you know what? I'm not a big fan of Stephen A. Smith, but I will say I give him for this. I give him credit for this. He's coming out and he's making a stand. And I
was gonna say Mayweather. He went to his favorite site, Fight Hype, with the interview there, saying that Stephen A. just a critic. Critics only got an opinion, like everybody else. Everybody can talk like they're a football genius, like they're a basketball genius, like they're a boxing genius, but we ain't never seen them do nothing but criticize athletes. I'm reading quote for quote. I'm quoting what Mayweather has to say.
Actually, you know what? Actually, you know what?
Let me finish. He said, so it doesn't matter who I fight. I can fight two dudes. At the end of the day, I working smarter. I'm not working harder. So Stephen A. Smith can go to First Take and say whatever he wants. I guess he's changing his tune. He was just in some shit a few weeks ago. So now I guess he wants to be politically correct. He's not worried about being. He's worried about being judged. I don't live and fight for Stephen A. Smith. He went on to say some other things. Let me say this. Let me say this. I want to chime in on just this quote right here. First of all, I watched First Take usually before I go to work, and nobody has praised Floyd Mayweather on that show like Stephen A. Smith. Even when the other co-host Skip Bayless, who, let's face it, is he's a contrarian and a sports troll and a Mayweather basher. That's one of the things that gets him on my nerves because he bashes Mayweather, but he does so unfairly that it's ridiculous.
Listen.
But well, it is.
The whole point of the show.
It is, and the whole point of the show is not really. They talk about boxing, but in such generic terms, so you can only take it seriously. But I'm just saying that Stephen A. Smith, he really praises Mayweather a lot, and for him to say, well, he was just in some stuff a few weeks ago, and he wants to be politically correct. Well, what he's talking about was Stephen A. Smith's response to Ray Rice's suspension. Floyd forgot that he was in similar trouble for his comments regarding Ray Rice, so he has some nerve to be talking.
Yeah.
So as far as that, but in terms of the show, look, it's ridiculous. As far as I'm concerned, elements about First Take are ridiculous.
It's a bunch of caricatures that they're not even. That's not even what they're really like in public.
But Mayweather, at the same time, should not be so doggone sensitive. He should take it for what it is. And the thing that Stephen A. Smith is right about, folks want to see him against Pacquiao. And to me, it seems like, look, I don't like what Floyd, how he acts outside the ring, but I've always given him credit for what he does inside the ring and his greatness as a fighter. And I'm one of the few who always notes that part of the reason that Pacquiao fight hasn't been made is because of what Bob Arum and his shenanigans behind the scenes. But when it comes to Floyd, there's something whenever this fight is mentioned, something about that gets under his skin because he's always saying something. He always giving the same old line, and you get sick and tired of it. And while this thing is in all ridiculous, it shouldn't have been made the news that it was, and the only reason we're talking about it was because it was so much news and we'll talk about it on mainstream sports channels and other boxing shows. But Stephen A. Smith, he can get on your nerves sometimes, but he kind of has a point.
He has a point here.
He kind of has a point, and Mayweather should not be so salty.
No, he shouldn't. But you know what the problem is, and I'm going to say it right now. When a guy like Stephen A. Smith, who's been your biggest cheerleader for the last 3 or 4 years, decides to turn the other, the
I
other.
don't even think he's turning.
I just think like a lot of other people, he's tired of hearing the excuses why the fight won't be made. It'll never happen. The fight will never happen. As far as I'm concerned, I am over that fight. I was over that fight 3 years ago. When that fight didn't happen, I was like, whatever, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. No one cares anymore. The only people that want to see the fight, and I don't care who gets mad from when I just said, huh?
Go ahead, Kent.
Still want to see the fight?
I still want to see the fight, but I'm just not going to see
it. See, the thing is, I'm just over it not I'm just content with it not happening at this point. I just don't care. I mean, if it happens, great, all right, whatever. But it's not going to happen, okay? And the only people that really are desperate for it to happen are Floyd fans. Those are the only guys that want to see the fight. You know why they want to? You know why? You know why I think they're the only ones that want to see the fight? So they can live in their pathetic minds every day in their life that Floyd didn't duck anybody. They need it. They need it more than Manny Pacquiao does at this point. They need it. They need it, not Manny. Manny's legacy is already secured. Okay, and you could say anything you want that Floyd's better than Manny. But let me tell you something. Manny's fighter of the decade, and allegedly Floyd, who crowned himself the best ever, was never crowned fighter in a decade.
TBDE. TBDE. TBDE.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to go that far. But
I'm not either.
I'm not going to go that far, but I'm going to say this right now. No, I know you just don't care at this point. You're just like, you just say how you feel, you know. But you know what? I'm not going to call him a ducker, but I'm going to say this. We don't want to see Floyd against anybody else unless it's a top 3 fighter.
You know,
if it's not Manny Pacquiao, it has to be, you know, that's just the point of the whole thing. If he's not going to fight that level of opposition, people are gonna stop turning. They're gonna turn away from him. No one wants to see that. Listen, look his. I'm gonna give you a good example of how many people have begun to turn away from Floyd. Since he signed that deal with Showtime, his pay-per-view sales has gone down. It's proof. His pay-per-view sales have gone down. The Maidana pay-per-views didn't sell. The Guerrero pay-per-views didn't sell. The only pay-per-view that sold in the 4 that he's had was Canelo. And do you think it was all Floyd fans that sold that Canelo pay-per-view?
Yeah, we're really gonna be honest. A lot of that had to do with Canelo, who has a huge following.
Exactly. And I'm not hating on Floyd. I am not hating on the man, but the proof speaks. You know, the proof is in the pudding. His pay-per-view sales have slowly dropped. There's a reason why they've dropped, because no one wants to see him fight the same generic contenders.
you can also say that's because Showtime's not as big as HBO, though.
No, yeah, you could say that also. But you got to understand that people are tired of seeing him just fight a top 12 contender. They want him to fight the top 2 or 3. Isn't that what the best ever allegedly does? He calls himself the best ever, and that's not coming from me. That's coming from him. He says he's the best ever. If you're the best ever, you fight the cream of the crop. You fight the best out there, the best pound for pound fighters. And my thing is, no one wants to see him fight another Maidana. People want to see him fight the guys in the top 3. End of story. And if he can't do that, then no one's gonna really care. And his fans can say that people are hating. No, we're not hating. We just
I was gonna say before I go to you, Sean. Let me give the response to Stephen A, who responded to this. I believe Monday this week. Give me a quick second. I'm gonna play the clip right here. Here we go.
Stephen A. Smith can go on First Take and say whatever he wants to say. Stephen A., I noticed over the weekend, I believe, you tweeted back at Floyd, because I'm assuming, and if you read the entire article, he tried to insinuate that you were being muzzled, that you can't speak freely. What's your take on all of this?
Well, my first take about it is that Floyd knows better than that. He knows that I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. And if anybody's backtracking, some would say that he's backtracked. Even if I did backtrack, which I don't believe that I do, at least I got a legitimate reason to. I work for somebody. I have to answer to somebody. That's ESPN. You want to call that a shame, then call most of the American public being shameful by somebody else. Floyd is worth close to $500 million, if not more. But he's backtracked from time to time, so I'd ask him to look in the mirror in that regard, and I'll leave it at that in terms of that particular point of view. But to take this matter further, I said on Twitter just the other night, Skip, and I'm going to reiterate my point. I'm not going to get into a Twitter war with Floyd Mayweather Jr. You know how I feel about Floyd. You know how great I think he is as a boxer, as a fighter. I think he's the best on the planet, and I stand by that. I'm going to be a man about this because somebody needs to. Here's the bottom line. Floyd Mayweather Jr. continues to tell the public that he just wants to give the fans what we want to see. My response is, People have been asking for Pacquiao for years. Miguel Cotto is an elite fighter, especially since now he's training with Freddie Roach. You go that route, nobody can knock you for that. Canelo Alvarez, despite the fact that you're Floyd and you schooled him and picked him apart, this dude is a young lion. He's big time. Some would think he's worthy of a rematch because he may have learned from that experience. They may have thought they saw some slippage from Floyd over the last couple of fights against Marcos Maidana. All right, and that might make the fight interesting. So you can understand that. But outside of those two fighters passing on Pacquiao, for those two fighters, there's no excuse to pass on Manny Pacquiao, particularly if what you're coming to us with is Amir Khan. Now, if Floyd Mayweather deciphered what I was trying to say, what I am saying is, in my opinion, Amir Khan is not in Floyd Mayweather's class. He doesn't belong in the same boxing ring as Floyd Mayweather. He didn't pay the dues that Floyd Mayweather paid. He doesn't have a flawless record exercised by or displayed by Danny Garcia, beating him to a pulp with a TKO victory in 4 rounds just a couple of years back. When you talk about a premier fight for boxing fans to see, we don't give a damn about Amir Khan when it comes to who we want to see in the ring with Floyd Mayweather Jr. And if that is what provoked Floyd Mayweather Jr. to go on his diatribe and go off on me, you know, that's fine. I accept it. I'm a big boy. This is what we do. I'm not trying to hurt anybody. Talking about, you know, they always talk about critics criticizing athletes. Last time I checked, we do a lot of praising of athletes as well. And one of the people that I know I have religiously praised is the greatness of Floyd Mayweather Jr. So because he disagrees with me on this particular point, he wants to go into that diatribe. The man has my number. He knows how to catch me. Floyd Mayweather Jr. knows that if he wanted to see me in Vegas, all he's got to do is pick up the phone and tell me he needs me to come out there, and I flow out there to talk to him man to man. All of this wasn't necessary, but he can do what he has to do. I'm not going to fall bait for it. I'm not going to get caught up in all of that in terms of trying to go back and forth, trying to disrespect a guy whose greatness as a boxer I have religiously and repeatedly lauded. Floyd Mayweather, to me, is the best boxer on the planet Earth. Floyd Mayweather, to me, would beat Pacquiao. I dare say I predicted that by the 11th round he would knock Pacquiao out. I believe that. And if me saying I'm acknowledging your greatness, but you can't give us this rinky-dink fight because that's what a fight with Amir Khan would be. It would not be worthy of what we anticipate the closing out portion of Floyd Mayweather's career should be. If he wants to have a problem with me on that, that's fine.
All right. Well, Floyd was asked about Stephen A's remark.
And your thoughts on that?
I'm going to say this right now. All Stephen A. Smith is saying, honestly, is what every fan or knowledgeable boxing fan has been saying for years. Basically the same thing. We want to see you fight the best. You know, and you know what? I'm going to say this right now. And I'm critical of Floyd Weber. But I'll say this right now. Floyd is the most gifted one of the most gifted fighters outside of Roy Jones and, should I say it, Rigondeaux in the last 25 years. Gifted. I'm saying gifted.
Fight.
Huh?
One fight.
Right, but the point is they're gifted. They have talent that you can't, you know.
They have talent that you just do not find in everyday boxers, even the good boxers.
Exactly.
I don't think you can compare Rigo to Floyd and Roy Jones, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, no, I know.
I know you have your issues with Rigo, but back to your
point. No issues.
About,
I just think you fight somebody. That's all.
No, I just think.
But we just talk about in terms of talent perspective and talent alone.
Yeah, we're not saying gifted as far as there are 3 fighters that are in the last 25 years that have amazing skill and are the most God-given, gifted fighters on the planet, and those are the 3.
Purnell.
Huh?
Throw Purnell in there too. Purnell.
I forgot Purnell, but I'm talking about right now. And he doesn't fight. He's not fighting the best. He's not. And that's all we're asking for is just fight somebody in the top 3. Listen, if you can't give us that fight, and you're going to give us Amir Khan, I don't know what else to say, but the point is the man is gifted, the man's got skill, the man can beat damn near anybody you want. I think he can beat a lot of guys and you know, a lot of top guys, but he just doesn't show it.
But you guys are missing what this whole flashback from Floyd is really about. It's not so much about Manny. It's mostly because Stephen A. Smith didn't have his back over the whole stupid abusive comments that Floyd Mayweather made.
Yeah, I think that as
his ass, and then he got all bent out of shape because that guy also, he feels, got pressured into like selling him out because he got suspended. So that's why Floyd's pissed off.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to. There's other things, but I think Stephen A. Smith is right. He's saying what other knowledgeable fans have been saying for the last 5 years. Why can't you give us this fight?
What everyone's been saying.
Yeah, well, except the brain dead fans, the Floyd fans that could care less, and just say, oh, it's all Aaron's fault that the Manny Floyd fight isn't happening. It's the drug testing, it's the needles, it's all this bullshit that doesn't even matter at the end of the day. Greatness rises above that and does whatever it takes to make it happen.
Right. See, the Ali movie, documentary just got released in the past week or so, and for me, if folks want to call Floyd or Floyd want to call himself the best ever, that's fine, because Ali, he used to call himself the greatest even before he fought Liston. But when you look at the long run with Ali in comparison in the two, when there was a fight to be made, when there was the biggest fight to be made, Ali did it. And I'm a guy who will say that Bob Arum had more of a role of this fight not happening. But at the end of the day, the fight should happen, period. Yeah. I don't care who. Arum, Pacquiao, Mayweather, Heyman, they should come together like adults, like men, and hash out their issues and get this fight made, because this fight has been talked about ever since November 2008 when Pacquiao beat De La Hoya. And right after the fight, Larry Merchant said that he wouldn't mind seeing Pacquiao move all the way up to fight Floyd Mayweather. And from that point on, and in particular after Pacquiao went up and knocked out Ricky Hatton in 2 rounds, that's what folks been talking about, and that's the folks the fight wants to see, the fans want to see. And all these years later, 5 years later, going on 6 years later now, the fight still hasn't been made, and that's the frustrating thing. For me personally, what makes it even more frustrating, I think he should make it the fight of Floyd, because he can beat this dude.
Oh, I think he can beat Floyd, but there's some reason why he's not making. There's something that bothers him about Pacquiao, and I truly think it goes beyond needles, it goes beyond steroids, it goes beyond level playing field.
I don't know what it is. I just don't want to say he's just outright scared. I don't know, but the bottom line is, listen, the fight should be made. I want to say that Sean had to go because, again, like I said, he's over the other side of the world. He has to go into work. I want to thank you, Sean, for joining us this week. Proceed on, Ken.
Yeah, like I said, I think it goes. I'm not saying the man is scared, but I think it goes beyond what is being said on the surface. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying the man's scared. There's always a risk with fighting anyone. There's always a risk. And I just think there's something more there that we're not being told. Listen, I respect Floyd Mayweather, and I always have. That's the whole thing. I've always have. Even when I've been critical of him, I've always respected him. But this is ridiculous. This is going on 6 years. Make the fight. No one cares about seeing Floyd and Amir Khan. No one cares.
Even if the fight is happening and they're not talking about it, let it be known, because this nonsense is just ridiculous.
Yeah,
this back and forth.
It's just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I'm not going to say that who's responsible for it not happening, but I think everybody plays a role here. Everyone. And I think the fight needs to be made. And if it seems like now more than ever, the Aram side is more willing and ready to do it. You know, why not? Just do it. Get it over with. Make the fight. That's what we want to see, okay? And if Floyd dominates and the Floyd fans go, I told you so, you know what, and do all that, that's fine. But at least we got to see the fight. At least we got to see the fight that people have been talking about for the last 5 to 6 years. Okay?
Absolutely, yeah. And now we had a little rant about that. Let's go on to talk about what I consider a really, really good doubleheader that's going to be happening this coming weekend, Saturday, as a matter of fact, in Carson, California, on HBO, as Gennady Golovkin, Triple G, middleweight champion, WBA version. He's going to defend his bout against Marco Antonio Rubio. And on the undercard, very good bout between Donaire and Nicholas Walters for, I guess you can call it kind of a unification thing of the WBA featherweight strap. Let's talk about Golovkin Rubio first. No, on the surface, Golovkin, he's the favorite. But I look at this fight, and I just got a vibe here that Rubio is going to make this a very tough fight for Golovkin. I still think Golovkin can win, possibly by decision, possibly by late round stoppage. But I think, first of all, Triple G hasn't faced anybody, a quality fighter, with the length and the height and the size of Rubio. And I think that, and the left-handed style of Rubio, I just think that he's going to give Triple G some problems here, particularly early on. For me, it's going to be a while before Gennady Golovkin figures him out and gets to Rubio.
Yeah, I agree. I could be wrong about this, but I think this is going to be a tough fight, probably the toughest of Triple G's, career. I know he's had about 30 fights, but this will definitely be the toughest of his career. And I just think, that's with me. That's the same thing with me. Rubio's height, size, his length, the southpaw style. I mean, yeah, he's a big puncher and he's kind of limited, but he's given guys problems in the past. All you have to do is look at his record. I mean, he's lost whenever he stepped up, but he's given guys problems. He's beaten guys. He's beaten prospects. Okay? He beat David Lemieux when David Lemieux was riding high, and he was the next coming.
Stopped him.
Stopped him. He gave Chavez a tough go. The size, it was just that Chavez was so damn big. He was like a cruiserweight, damn near a heavyweight the night of the fight. But Rubio had his moments in that fight. Rubio's had his moments against Pavlik, even though he got stopped against Pavlik. He had his moments. So he's a competitive guy in these fights. But he ends up, at the end of the day, whenever he faces a higher level, they always end up getting the better of him. And there's nothing wrong with that. Rubio's been the quintessential A- B-level fighter for a decade. Just that guy that just can't get over the hump. He's always there. He wins fights against the B and C level guys, but he can never make the jump and win an A level fight. And I think Golovkin will stop him on Saturday, but I think it'll be a tough fight, and I think it will be a late stoppage. And this will be an easy fight for all the critics of Triple G to come out of the woodwork and say he's not that good, he's overrated, blah, 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 blah. But styles make fights, okay? And I think Rubio has a style to trouble Triple G for the first half of the fight. I don't think he wins, but I think he has a style to trouble Triple G the first half of the fight. I think as the fight goes into the second half, Triple G is going to make his move, and he's going to go to work, and he's going to make his imprint on the fight, and I think he stops him, and I think he stops Rubio between rounds 10 and 12.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Like I said, I think it's going to even be a late round stoppage or a decision win for Golovkin, but he's going to be in it tough. The undercard bout I'm really looking forward to. Actually, I'm looking forward to this undercard bout more than I'm looking forward to the main event. And that shows you how good the card is. the doubleheader is HBO doubleheader is Nonito Donaire will be fighting Nicholas Walters. Donaire is a known guy, former champion at flyweight, junior bantamweight, junior featherweight, and now featherweight. Fighting Nicholas Walters that a lot of folks don't know about, but he's a guy, big guy for featherweight, can punch, and improving with each fight. Destroyed Victor Artinian last time out in Macau, and for me, I look at this fight. The key is the attitude of Donaire. Donaire is the fastest fighter with the hands and the feet. Donaire, I think, can really punch. For even though he's moving up in weight, I'm still having questions on whether he's a real featherweight. The guy can punch, and the guy can take a pretty decent shot. But his last few bouts, I don't think the spirit has been there. I don't think the intensity, the attitude has been there. I wonder if the fire is there or is it waning. If he fights with the fire, if he returns to using combinations and using the jab, he can beat Walters. If he doesn't, don't be surprised if Walters not only beats him, but stops him, Ken.
Yeah, I've been going back and forth on this fight, but I don't think he stops Donaire. I think if he wins, he wins by wearing Donaire down.
That's what I mean. When I mean stopping Donaire, I'm talking 10th, 11th, 12th round, late stop.
Yeah. But I just don't see that. I think Donaire is a very durable guy. He's a very tough guy. He can take a punch, and I've been a huge critic of Donaire, and everybody knows that, even back from the Spreecast days. Everybody knows I'm a critic of Donaire. But the thing is, with Donaire, the reason, and I have a right to be a critic because a lot of people hyped this guy up when he was trying to make him a guy that he really wasn't. The media made him into something he wasn't. But that being said, he's a very good fighter. He's still a very good fighter. I think he's past his prime now. I noticed in his last couple of fights, he's kind of gone to one shot. The one shot. He doesn't throw in combination like he used to. So it tells me he's kind of, apprehensive. Maybe the reflexes aren't what they used to be. But
I think it has to do with the fact that he's moved up in weight. For me, ever since he moved up to 122 pounds, he's been a guy who pot shots, look for the big punch.
Right.
That's not with Vasquez.
Yeah, and I think the thing with him is I think he was a big puncher at 115. Well, 115, 118. I think he was a big puncher. I think as he's moved up in weight, he's still a big puncher, but the guys are bigger, and they can take his shot a lot better. Not saying he can't knock out guys, because he did knock out Victor Artinian, but the point is they can take that bigger shot. Like the bigger guys can take the shot a little bit better than he did when he was fighting in the smaller weight classes. And I think he'll have his moments in this fight. I think he has the potential of knocking out Nicholas Walters, because Nicholas Walters has been dropped before in fights. But I think if Walters can keep the work rate and stay busy and just put pressure on Donaire, and smart pressure, not reckless pressure, smart pressure, he can wear Donaire down. I think the size of Walters is going to play a factor later in the fight. I don't think it'll be a factor early, but as the fight goes on, it'll play a factor. And we and even recently with Donaire, I mean, look at the fight. Even though he beat Vetyeka, he had the moment where he dropped Vetyeka, but he couldn't seal the deal. And we saw that Vetyeka was able to get his way back into the fight before the fight was stopped on the cut. And Donaire struggled against Vic. He was behind on 2 cards before he knocked him out. So unless he could get to, Walters with a big shot and hurt him and put him down and finish the deal, I could see him getting outboxed and losing a close decision. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but we know that Donaire nowadays, nowadays he doesn't use the combinations like he used to. at one time, you know, a few years ago, maybe I would have thought, yeah, he beats Walters, you know, using combinations and his speed and his power. But nowadays, he just looks for one shot or two shots, and it's easy, you know, and he's not as busy as he used to be, and guys who are just a little bit busier can steal rounds against him, and that's what I could see happening.
Excuse me, I had the mic mute for a second there. I'm sorry. Just read some. We think we're going to shut the show down on that note, but I had to read this comment from Mr. Boxing Addict, who's commented on the YouTube on the YouTube Google Plus page. He was responding to you, Ken. He used to laugh and say, "Ha ha ha ha." Kid's making me pissed with his Floyd's ducking comments, but he's right though. It will hunt Floyd. And that
Yeah,
comment was directed towards you, Ken.
listen. I know Mr. Boxing Addict has been he's been on the show and he's a frequent commenter, but I'm not going to say he's a ducker, but there's some reason why this fight hasn't been made, and I just don't think it's the needles and the promoter and not working with Bob, and I think it's a lot of stuff. I don't think it's one particular thing. I think it's a lot of things, and I don't want to label the man a ducker, because it's bad enough, you know. There's a lot of people that label him a ducker, but I'm not going to label him a ducker. I think there's some other reason why the fight hasn't happened besides needles, steroids, Bob Arum, and other assorted excuses. I don't know what it is, but I'm not labeling the man, okay? But it is what it is.
Yeah, and I think we're going to close the show down on that note. Thank you, Mr. Boxing Addict, for listening to
I appreciate the comment, though. But I do definitely agree with him, that it's going to come back and haunt him. I do agree with that. I just don't want to label the man a ducker, I'm critical of Floyd. I've always been critical of Floyd, but at the same time, I want to see him fight the best, and there's nothing wrong with that. And all fans, top fighters at least, should be fighting the best. Plain and simple. That's how it should be. I understand the politics of the game. I understand how the sport is. I understand there's always somebody, looking for ulterior motive and edge. There's a reason why people fight who they fight. I get that. But as a fan, and as somebody who's watched the sport for almost half my life, the best should always be fighting the best, and that's my whole issue with Floyd. And I have no problem, I would have no real issue with Floyd if he just did that. That's all I'm asking as a fan. But if he wants to go and fight who he fights, that's his choice. He can do what he wants. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit here and and do like a lot of his fans call him the best ever. The best ever doesn't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that note, we're going to shut down the show. I'll give you the information for Sean. If you want to follow and talk boxing with Sean, just look up Sean Newton on G Plus or YouTube. He's everywhere. He'll comment on anybody and everybody.
He's everywhere. He is the resident YouTube boxing video troll. Pretty
much. And for folks who want to get in touch with you and talk about boxing or anything else, can let the folks know where they can find you.
They can reach me at facebook.com/kent.ayers.1. You can reach me there. I talk boxing. I'll talk boxing with anybody, if they want to contact me there. I add people who I know, so if you see me on the show and want to talk boxing, you can add me. That means anyone, as long as you're not a troll or anything. That I don't play with, but other than that, anybody else, they want to talk boxing sensibly, you can add me there.
As long as you're not a racist troll, especially because let's just say I had to block a couple of folks from not this YouTube page, but not this Google Plus page, but the Google Plus page where I do the show notes and share the blog and stuff. You know who you are. You were out of line for what you were saying, and that's all. I'm gonna just leave it at that. So yeah, if you want to find,
What's that?
We were talk. I posted a link. Well, just to give a little, just a little insight, some disclosure here. I was sharing the link about Stephen A. Smith and Floyd. And look, I've always said about Floyd, I don't like how he acts in the ring, but I will defend him against racist trolls. Guy jumped on and said some really out of pocket stuff. I said that's not going to allow here on this page. I appreciate you to correct your language. He decided to try to do that about me. I was like, I'm not having it. I end up blocking him. He know who he is. He wrong for that.
No, listen. I'm going to tell you right now. There's one thing me and Mike doesn't like. We don't like racists. Okay. Look at boxing. Look what kind of sport boxing is. Boxing brings in all colors, races, creeds, anybody. In boxing, I mean, racism does exist in boxing. I agree with that, but it's such a melting pot sport. There's no reason to be racist. You have all sorts of fans. It is what it is, and I think that's with any sport. And racism not cool. So anybody who's going to be racist, we're not down with that. You can do it wherever you want to do it. You can do it. There's plenty of other communities that cater to that. In the boxing community, we're not involved with that.
Yeah, I'm not cool with that. I'll give you a couple of warnings. If you act that way, I'll just block you. He don't give no damn. He won't give you no warning. He'll cuss you out. So don't try it. That's all I'm gonna say.
I don't give anybody any warning. If you get like out of line and I don't like it, I cut you off. I'll block you. It doesn't matter what. I don't give warnings. I don't put up with that. Listen. People don't realize, that boxing is a sport that brings in all different people. And I'm fans of boxers no matter what color they are or what race they are or what creed they are. So there's no room for that for me. So at the end of the day, you know what? That goes for anybody. Doesn't matter who it is. You racist, we don't want nothing to do with that.
Yeah, absolutely. For those who want to follow me and talk about boxing or anything else on Twitter, you can reach me out at Brother JR. If you want to find out information about the pound, you can also reach me through the Pound for Pound Boxing Report at P4P Boxing Report on Twitter. Again, if y'all want to know what it is, you want to find out more information about the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, go to the blog page p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. Just made it to the finals of the 2014 Black Web Blog Awards.
Vote. You vote on election day, but if you can, you can vote for this. Please vote.
And the voting for the finals start October 21st. You can also check out the podcast page, previous episodes of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report podcast. On both of those links, you can find information of where to find us all over the internet's interwebs. Next week's show, I'm saying it right now, it's going to be a short show because there's nothing really going to be happening that weekend. So it will be mainly a recap of Golovkin and Rubio, of Donaire and Walters, and if we get to see the fight, we didn't talk about it right now, but Shizuki Yamanaka, who's the best bantamweight in the world, he's going to be defending his world title, so we will probably talk about that as well. And so I want to thank you, Ken, for joining me again this week.
I want to thank Sean. I want to just jump out and thank Sean for coming by. I know he gassed out before we gave the predictions, but thanks for being on.
And officially, he left a note in the chat. Let me get it right quick. Oh, come on. He says he has Donaire and Triple G winning by KO. So, yeah, thanks, Sean, for joining us this week because it's tough. He's always on the other side of the world, joining us live from Taiwan. For Kent, for Sean, I'm your host, Michael. This has been another episode of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. You guys have a good evening. Good night.
Good night.